what stage did you put? I want you everybody close your eyes. Close your eyes and hold up 1, 2, or 3. Which stage you hold it up high? Hold them up high. Hold them up high. All right. Don't change your answer. Open your eyes and look. Okay, so lots of 1s, and we had a couple 2s back here, and kind of a. I think Dave.
A 1.5.
Is that what that was? Charles was sort of. I don't know. Okay, so what would so we definitely established that this is an early stage venture. A lot of stuff that Kirk doesn't know yet. Would you think? And I'm not going to take time, but you might also want to sort of think about what's one SMART goal that you might want to establish with Kirk for this venture if you were going to be their mentor. Okay, just maybe that would be the next step. Again, we're running short on time, but do you have something?
I was just going to say to identify what he thinks he can buy and whether or not that he's going to try and sell to people, and is it worth that markup?
Deb is excellent at asking the right questions, and that would be the right question, right? That would be the very first question, which is what's the product, because that's sort of the basis of what he's saying is going to happen if people want to buy this product. You can't just create the need with, hey, we're going to re-nourish the beaches. It's got to actually be something people want to buy. So, okay, great job on that. And then, so you'll want to do that process, and that's kind of the kind of discussion that you'll have to restage the venture at first. And I think that suggestion of maybe talking as mentors, even if you do a Zoom meeting or some sort of virtual meeting, before you get together with the mentee for the first time to restage the venture is a really good idea, depending on the sort of attitude of the mentee. All right, so just so that I'm just going to quickly review what the process is. When you have your very first meeting, you've got to do some things as the team lead, okay? One is you've got to get some agreements on the timeline, your meeting schedule, what location you're going to use, or if you're going to use a virtual tool. Again, a lot of meetings are held here for that reason. We've got the technology to be able to Zoom people in or Skype them in. First meeting checklist we are going to have is one of the things in our repository. We don't have that for you today. It comes from the CED materials, and we're sort of revamping that to work better as a checklist for our organization. So you will have something to guide you. First meeting should cover these things, and you should be able to checklist them all. That will be in the documents repository to guide you as a team lead.
How do we book this room?
Yeah, what?
How do we book this room?
How do you book
send
this
you,
room?
Yeah, do we just send
Laura
you an email?
left, but
Laura
Okay.
left, but you can
Send
do it
her an email.
through Laura, or just send me an email and
and there's
get
lots
you
of
in touch with her.
And there's lots of smaller conference rooms too. So if you have a laptop and you need to Zoom somebody in, you could use that and use some of the smaller conference rooms if it's not a large team. Confidentiality, we've touched on. We're going to have repository documents for confidentiality because we do want to protect the mentee's ideas. And then program protocols, things like what you are allowed to do and what you shouldn't do, like let's not practice law without a license, that's a bad idea, things like that. We can get Tracy involved, or Virginia, or Barry, who's not here today, but actual attorneys to do that work. Okay, I do want to just touch on, has anybody ever heard of the team development stages of team development? Okay, raise your hand. So most of you know this. I'm going to just, again, we got to think metacognitively. There's going to be a process, right? The team meets, you set expectations, that's called forming. Then you're going to have some storming. Storming is where the slightly uncoachable entrepreneur, for instance, might say, I don't like this idea. Or, why are you guys trying to direct me in this direction? So there might be some storming and some argument, and conflict is a really natural, normal part of our lives as interacting as humans together. In fact, I usually, with my students, I usually say, conflict, all of us have had different experiences with conflict, and not all those experiences have been positive. And so what I say is conflict is like this chair, and I want to give you this visual image that a chair is a useful thing, right? If we sit in it and it's comfortable, it doesn't collapse like mine did a few minutes ago. I don't know if anybody knows that. Deb did. But so is this chair good or bad?
Just a chair.
What?
Just a chair.
It's just a chair, but I'm using it effectively. Now, if I pick it up and I throw it at Lisa,
Hey, why me?
yeah, you're in range. Is it a good or a bad thing?
It is good.
Depends on how well this Again, it's just a thing, right? So it just being a thing makes it useful when it's used properly and destructive if it's used improperly. So I want you to think about conflict as that, because conflict is a really excellent way to figure things out quickly about other people. When everyone arrives late and the team lead blows up, if you are on time, you are late. Okay, well, we've just established some norms for that team. That means we need to start on time. Okay, that's the storming process. And that's the gaining trust process. Okay, between storming and norming, we often have a lot of conflict. Norming is just creating normative behaviors. These are the boundaries, these are the expectations of the team, all of that stuff. You can do it by explicitly stating those things. You can do it by ascribing to some other document, which we will have. And you can do it by sort of casually agreeing amongst yourselves how you'll run your team. Okay, so that's the norming part. Performing is when you pay all those dues, you actually get to be productive in your team. And then a journey, and Bill's going to talk about the intentional way that we want to end our process with our mentees in just a minute. Any questions about the team development process? Okay. So conflict happens, and I want to give you a very helpful. I wrote a curriculum years and years ago when I was started out as a mediator. My first business that I ever started out, I was 23. It was a mediation center, still running here, the ADR Center, and I trained hundreds and hundreds of people in conflict resolution, and I spent a lot of time writing and developing curriculum for kids and adults and how to resolve conflicts. And one of the things, and you can get real complicated about how conflicts should go, but one of the things I found is if you give people a very simple mnemonic tool, it helps, it sort of sticks in your brain and helps whenever you encounter conflict, because when we encounter conflict, especially if we're not used to it, we don't like it, our affect goes up, our emotions sort of rise to the surface. We get defensive and we forget, we get tunnel vision, and we forget to actually use it productively. All right, so here's a little process. It's called ABC. And if you use the ABC process, when you encounter conflict in your teams, which is normal, natural, and to be expected, I want you to use the ABC process, okay? Don't run away from it because conflict is good. It can be a chair. We're going to use it. You ask first what the issue is. You ask. Again, we're going to follow Stephen Covey's advice, and we're going to seek first to understand. So ask what the problem is. Hey, I noticed there's some tension in the room. Can I ask maybe what's caused that? Okay, using neutral language to do that. And then brainstorm, ask, and once you ask, then it's okay to tell. Okay, so ask what the other people think the problem is, and then it's okay to say, hey, well, I think maybe this is what happened. Use I statements. Don't say you caused this problem, Bruce, because what happens to Bruce? When I start using you statements, Bruce feels shamed, blamed, accused, and he puts up this great wall, and he usually puts some sort of the turrets on the top, and he sticks his guns on there and he'll shoot at me. And that's how we defend our positions. We want to de-escalate conflicts, so we want to use asking first and then telling. Then brainstorming without evaluation, which means, okay, well, let's come up with some ideas about how we might be able to solve this problem. And don't evaluate those ideas. Remember, suspend about judgment, just like we talked about earlier. And then you can choose one. And when you choose the solution to a problem, make sure everyone's winning, right? Everyone needs to feel that nobody walks away blamed, nobody walks away as a loser. Everyone feels like, hey, this is going to work for the whole team. Now, we do want to make sure that we keep in mind teams should have superordinate goals, and superordinate goals are just goals that we subjugate our own needs to meet that goal, right? So as a team, we might not be able to get everything we want as an individual on that team, but the team's going to benefit, and so we ascribe to that superordinate goal, and you as a team leader have to keep that in mind, because sometimes you have to say, okay, I understand we don't agree on this, but what's best for the team? And that's bringing people back together and sort of giving them a new focus, all right? So I know that's really quick, and we'll have this available again on the Twitter repository so you can use it. I do want to look at a video on questions real quick, because questions are a great tool in conflict, and they're also a great tool to sort of move the conversation along. So I'm going to click on that, and then we're going to do a little bit of practice on how to use questions appropriately, because we know how to listen now. Now we're going to use questions. All right. So we're going to practice that, and then I'm going to bust them out of here and leave it with Phil. So I want you now, all the B's are gonna tell the A's what they are passionate about, but you're only gonna get to say it in one sentence. One sentence, and don't make it a long run-on, come on. Just one sentence about what you're passionate about, and the A's are gonna ask the B's questions to get all the other information. So you're gonna practice questioning. I want you to try to use open-ended questions, probing questions, and something closed-ended to sort of wrap it up. So you got 3 minutes to practice, and I will see you when I get back sometime after 11, all right?
Dump and run, huh?
Yeah. A little more class.
Those of you who are asking, so that somebody made a statement, the pair of you, those of you who are asking questions, how difficult was it to come up with that first question? And was it, tell me whether or not it was open, closed?
I felt the first question was easy because it was just an open-ended question. And then she went on for about, a minute about what was her passion behind it.
And why did she do that? Because she was limited to one sentence to begin with, right?
Yeah,
So
because
now
I
she
asked
wanted
an
to explain
open-ended question, yeah.
Very typical in this kind of exercise.
And then I could narrow from there and say, be a little bit more probing, well, why would you do it that way?
It was actually easy because I watched 60 Minutes.
Really? How long have you been doing that?
You were selling drugs, Congressman? Easy.
Hello, brother.
I find that one of the biggest challenges is once I have an idea, to not shift it to closed. Have you thought about this? Have you tried this? Do you think this would work? As opposed to keeping it open to keep it going.
And the other challenge is to try actually and not force yourself to just go down the funnel. That sometimes you might get to probing and then you want to go back to open. And actually sometimes you got to think, this is a nice idea and process, but process isn't the end all be all. And you can let yourself float between types of questions.
And boy, when you're sitting down with that venture group and you're a team and you're asking questions, you're gonna go up and down that scale. You're gonna be all over the place, but just kind of make it work as best you can for you. But if you're aware of this, then you are gonna make it work in the long run. And sometimes you're gonna say, why did I ask that? But lots of times you'll say, okay, that led me to another good question that's there. How many of you have heard of a divergent convergent thinking process? Anybody been through a class on divergent convergent thinking? Okay, a lot of this is the divergent part of this, where a divergent thinking process is you're working on a problem and you want everybody in this room to tell you how they see that problem. And if you start doing that out loud right away, somebody makes a comment, Dan will say something, well, I see the problem this way. Half the people in the room, especially introverts, will say, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm thinking. And you will never hear from them their real idea. So a divergent thinking process, if you can, starts with everybody in the room writing a few notes down first. What's their opinion on something? And then you make sure you hear all those notes, because those notes came out before anybody said anything that influenced your thinking. So divergent keeps it open, and it goes back to what Cynthia was saying earlier. And you keep adding. When somebody says something, Deb's sitting there talking about something and she makes a comment, I don't say, well, that's stupid, that's not gonna work, I tried that years ago. You'll say, and what else could you do with that? You wanna add to it, you wanna keep it on the table, it's positive. So you're diverging, you keep expanding. And then to get into the convergent side, you have to kind of group all the stuff that you got. You have to put it in patterns. Some of those patterns will make a lot more sense than others. And that's how you get to the end. Okay, we're going to have one little closing slide here that talks about intentional wrap up. This is at the end of that 6 months. And by the way, it doesn't always have to last. I mean, you might make great progress with this group and you're 4 months into the process and you're saying, hey, this is time to end this mentoring group and we're where we wanted to be. More than likely, you're not going to be there, but that could happen. Just as much as it might have to be extended. So, but the intentional ending is, it involves doing a few things to leave it the right way. Mainly to say this thing down in here, hand off stuff to the entrepreneur so they can just go now. So You want to go through all this. Just read these things. Materials will be accessed to it. Stan's going to talk about where the sites were and the information. You give it to the entrepreneur. They have to be able to go from now. And they should, if you've had a good 6 months with them, they should have a good sense of direction. They should be comfortable.
I think one of the things in counseling clients is not just listen to their ideas and their concepts, but to listen to who they are. Find out who the person is and find out, and it makes them relax if you ask them questions about them. Why, what motivated them to get into the business? What is motivating, what's their background in terms of the person who you're talking to, and that helps to understand their motivation in terms of the product or the service or where they're going with their business. And I have found that it relaxes them, and also you learn a lot more because you're listening of who they are,
Yeah.
as opposed to what they're doing.
And that type of questioning period, when you go through that, that's part of what we're having on bullets, where we're saying you're building some respect, you're listening, you're trying to grow your ability to analyze what's going on here, and that's going to give you a lot more information than you would have if you never got into that. It's building a relationship, it'll build respect, and maybe they get more enthusiastic because they think, wow, there's an interest in me, pick the right customer. But all those paths are choices, and as a mentor group, we have to watch where we're pushing and where they want to go, what they feel, and are we right or wrong? Maybe nobody yet is right in that room because it's that new, and you have to build that as you go. And you'll take a step down a path, and it's going to be the wrong one many times because you're getting into new ground. That's not a problem. Because we fail. As we're innovating things, we fail at things. That's part of that. You take a step, it's the wrong path, great. Step back, do it fast, do it cheap, step back, go on another path, and you're going to be heading in the right direction eventually. It's part of innovation. You got to fail. You're going to be taking steps at times as a mentor group with a venture that's not going to be the perfect one. Recognize that, back up, go somewhere else.
And I think it's important to recognize, to be able to tell a mentee, you're going to fail. How you're going to fail, and to prepare for that. Because the last thing you want to do is all of a sudden be in front of an investor who doesn't get it. And if he doesn't get it, he or she does not get it, you got to figure out how to make them get it, or accept the fact, okay, you don't get it, you're not going to fund me, and you move on.
Yeah.
And you walk away more encouraged as a result of that failure than being discouraged. And I've met with 2 or 3 people who, when I walk away, I just look at them and go, boy, they didn't get it. But what I learned about it was why they didn't get it. And when I answered that own question in my own mind with the help of Diane, it was, okay, where do we go next? I'm energized.
What a learning process. I mean, you see that in front of us right now? It's just a learning process that you're going through. And if we're open to that, when we're doing this, we're going to build that trust, we're going to build the respect that we need, because we're listening, we're moving into the right realm, we're going to go wrong, we're going to go right.
Yeah,
We've got a lot of choices.
It's at the very end, it's not, okay, we did our job, we've left you with a whole bunch of steps, and now you bow out of it. There's a little bit more to it than just that.
Okay, you want to take a break stand up?
Just stand up. If you do need to take a break, take it, but we need to keep going. We're running behind, and it's going to really put us in a crush for the.
Make money.
So hi everyone, I'm Dan
You
Lockwood.
want me to tell you how
I'm
to make
a
money?
marketing consultant.
Yeah.
My background is analytics, databases and operations. And part of my ways of working is always kind of very structured approach. One of the things that led to is me being volunteered to do this section on ways of working. I'm going to keep it brief. It's nothing that's going to be a surprise to people. It's just easy to miss these points when you get involved in conversations, you get down into it. But a lot of it is applying what Cynthia and Bill were going through. But it's addressing these challenges that we had. So working with the mentees, the entrepreneurs so far, we've come across kind of consistently these challenges. And it's been raised in meetings as well. So ensuring we have an effective use of time. As we mentioned before, we get 6 1.5-hour meetings. That's not a lot. So how do we make sure we make use of that time? Some of the challenges we have with that is that mentors, not everyone can make every meeting. So how do we quickly get people back up to speed? We had a meeting where a few people missed the previous meeting, and we spent half of that 1.5 hour session bringing everyone back up to speed. That doesn't seem like the most effective use of time. So we get new mentors joining the program. I think Keith mentioned it last meeting. It's like, well, we've got new mentors joining. How do they know what else is going on? All these different groups that are working, how do we effectively bring people up to speed with all those different, at the moment we've got, I think, 6 or 7. But once we get 20 or 30, it's an entire hour and a half meeting as a group just to catch everybody back up to speed on progress. So how do we work through that challenge that we've got? You might need guest mentors. We talked about specialisms. So you form a team, a few meetings in actual fact, we need some legal help, or we need a marketing expert, or we need to run a clinical trial, and we bring new people in. So how do we get those people up to speed and do that quickly without, again, using that precious 1.5 hours that we've got? One of the other challenges we find is that entrepreneurs can sometimes be very idea focused, very creative, and not being through the world of business where you have to sit down, you have to make your notes, you have to structure it, you have your plan, you have your strategies, you have your concepts, you develop your SMART objectives. So how do we help them keep track of what they should be doing, of what progress we're making, of what we have discussed as a mentor team, and make sure that they get the most out of those meetings? We have cases where mentors will advise people, give their input, next meeting come back, and we're back to where we were before in the previous meeting. So how do we help the entrepreneurs keep track and keep that progress going? And then one of the things we've also mentioned before is confidentiality. How do we work collaboratively? How do we do all of this whilst keeping things confidential? How do we share documents and make sure that it's not just fired off on an email, or someone forwards it to the wrong person, or it's open for the world to see, when in actual fact it shouldn't be. We need to help protect that idea that the entrepreneur has, yet work quickly to help them move forward. So that's some of the challenges we've gone through. So solutions is really basic. I like to keep things simple. I'm a simple guy. So what we're going to cover today quickly, but if you have any questions at the end in Diana's section, we can ask that, or post this meeting. I'll be around. So any questions, just ask me or anyone else. So we're going to run through meeting best practices, and then what we've discussed as a kind of onboarding team is the collaborative ways of working. So tools, and then roles and responsibilities, and how they all work together to allow us to hopefully be effective at that time and move forward quickly for the entrepreneurs. So best practices, it's been mentioned before, pre-circulating agenda. It's obvious, it's simple, but it's often overlooked when you're busy, when people are just quickly meeting. It's like the point of an agenda is to make sure that in advance people can prepare those questions that they've got. This is where we are, this is the points that the entrepreneur wants to discuss, because this is where they're struggling. So you can prepare in advance how to help them, or if you've got any questions, and you can come to that, set time limits for each section so we can stay on time in meetings, to use that hour and a half effectively. Help ensure everyone gets the input. Again, we've talked about that listening. We've talked about certain people like to interrupt too many times. How do you make sure that everybody in the room gets a chance to input? And that's something that we each have to be conscious of. We all are in a team for a specific purpose. We all have our expertise. Make sure that we don't interrupt all the time. Make sure that we let people have their chance to talk. But as a person, as a mentor, make sure you're not just trying to dominate all that time. Finish with agreed next steps. This is one of my favorites. We have a meeting. What's the point? What are we there to do? We're there to help and discuss, but at the end of the meeting, who's supposed to do what by when? We're not just there just to have a nice coffee and catch up. Every meeting should be there to help the entrepreneur, the mentee, move forward, get through a blockage. And they're not going to do that necessarily in that meeting. They're going to have to go away and do something. Or maybe, there's occasions where, one of us might have to go away and do something and come back to the group with something. So always finish with those agreed next steps. Who's going to do what and by when? And then the last point, document it. So what we've been talking about is having a repository. In there will be different folders for every group that's been formed. And one of those documents is going to be the notes on what was discussed, the progress that's been made, who's doing what, the next steps, what's been achieved. There might be 1 or 2 different documents that's going. There might be a big one for the team that's been formed, and there might be a summary of that which can be viewed by everyone else. So we've had kind of a few discussions in the group around that. Nothing's set in stone, but we are going to be providing templates. So there's a couple of templates that we're talking about, a Word document and a spreadsheet, so action points can be clearly captured and filtered and looked through and see where the progress is and times that are assigned to those and people if necessary. Some groups might not need that. They might just need the Word document which says we talked about this, we discussed this, and this is it. But one of the things we've always said is have that document so we can track progress. And this is where if someone misses a meeting, they can check, can see what was discussed, and they can get back up to speed. So that's going to be a shared document or 2 documents that will be available, and that'll allow us to keep up to speed, keep everybody up to date, and move forward. So collaborative working is part of this. So collaborative working is something that we've all done. We've all worked with other people. But as we mentioned before, for team mentoring, it's meeting as a team, not one-on-one. So we all make sure we're pulling in the same direction, we're not confusing, and everyone stays up to date on what's going on. But part of that meeting one-on-one is the collaborative working. So if we've got a document, or if we had a case where the entrepreneur sent a question on an email and asking for views, opinions, advice. And next thing you know, there's that one email is spread into 4 different email chains with about 20 emails on each one, and bombarding the entrepreneur. Mentors were getting lost and confused about from which chain to reply to. You give an input and no one get back to you, and you're like, well, what's happening there? And it just all became very, very big very quickly. Emails do that. So one of the things we talked about is just have that consciousness about how best to answer the questions. 1.5 hour meetings, six meetings is not a lot. In between those meetings, entrepreneurs are going to need some help, some advice. So how do they best approach that? So yes, if they need to do that via email, then maybe the team lead should coordinate all the responses, and then we go back with one voice, one response, and it's not branched off into many different chains and confusing the entrepreneur as well as each other. But again, one of the things we talked about is maybe rather than email, they can use one of the shared documents. So a shared document could be the question form there, and then everyone gets a chance to input their comment or their suggestions on there. That can be reviewed, it can be tidied, comments which are, can be then commented on, so we can have a discussion on there in one place. And then tidy that to one resolution to help the entrepreneur go forward. And the last point there, ensure the meetings are on Zoom. So Zoom is like Skype, it's a video conferencing. So basically, I might have the time to meet for 1.5 hours, but if I've got a meeting somewhere else, or I'm in the office, or I know it's going to be an hour drive to get here, an hour drive to get back, I might not be able to commit 3.5 hours rather than just that 1.5 hours. So making it more accessible to people, knowing that people can call in, contribute. Zoom allows screen sharing. So one of those things that we are looking at is collaborative working, the tools to allow that. So Zoom's mentioned at the bottom, I'll come back to that. For Google Drive. So Google provide a free suite of tools like Microsoft Office. It's free, you can use it on a laptop, whether that's a Mac or a PC, you can use it on your smartphone, Android and Apple. It allows you to work collaboratively in real time. So if you've got a document open there on the word processing, so Google Docs is their word processor, multiple people simultaneously can be inputting onto that, and you can see who's doing it. It doesn't override everybody else's, and it's real-time sharing. Google Sheets is a spreadsheet. It's got the slides for the presentations. It's also got forms. So Google Forms is a survey, so we might find that's another way a entrepreneur can ask a question to the group. So you ask a question, multiple choice answer, which are the A, B, C, and that can be a quick, easy way of them to collate responses from people. Zoom, as I mentioned before, it allows people to connect even if they're not in the same room. I think that's going to be important for people with tight schedules and timelines. It allows screen sharing, and it can also be recorded. So if there's a meeting that you want to record, for people to view afterwards, or for you even, for yourself to be able to recap on what's happened, or Cynthia and her research program, we can record those sessions and play it back and have that on file to be able to review and go back and learn from, and to make sure we get a proper understanding of what's going on. So roles and permissions, yeah.
About Zoom, is that the industry norm now rather than Skype?
Yes and no. So Zoom and or Skype, they have different pricing models and different freemium versions which are available. They're very similar to each other. They pretty much offer the same thing. Zoom is just one that we've been used to using the CIE, so that's what we're going forward with. But again, if we find that Zoom doesn't suit the needs, it's not set in stone. We can flex. It can be that.
Is the free
Yes,
version still limited to 40 minutes?
That's only for 3+ people.
Yeah. So it does have. You're right. It does have that limitation. If the CIE pay for, if you want to do an hour-and-a-half meeting fully on it,
Okay.
the CIE
Good.
who host the meeting would potentially pay that, but as a mentor dialing in, it's still free. And you can call in on your Wi-Fi connection from home or the office, so it doesn't cost you to dial in. It's got no cost to the user, just potentially the host, unless we hang up after 39 minutes and then read that out.
Exactly.
One thing I probably should say
Okay.
on collaboration tools as well is not everyone will know how to use Google Docs. So I will be creating, or we will be creating how-to guides. So kind of how to get set up on it, how to use it, the basic principles of it, and that'll be in a repository along with other documents. Also encouraging mentors to help mentors, which I think we do naturally. Some of us will be okay with the Google suite of tools, and we'll be happy to help with people, and if needed, I'm happy to run a 15-minute session with people to help them get started.
With Zoom, and if you recorded the session, can you upload that to Trello boards?
We've talked about kind of other collaborative tools in Trello, or there's a bunch of other stuff, but the recording is there within Zoom, and you can put a link to that from within the team document that we got. But Trello, did you say, isn't a tool that we've kind of talked about using for like the jobs and the tasks. There's a bunch of other kind of applications that we did talk around, and what we came back to is trying to keep it simple for people. So at the moment, we need to make sure it's accessible to people. Not everyone's aware of Trello or ever used it before. So we're trying to keep it in a way that is accessible to everybody, easy to pick up. And we may get to that stage where we'd love to expand that once everybody's comfortable with where we are.
I think it's important to be sure that the collaboration tools are easy for everybody to use, because if some of us are more technically challenged than others, and if people can't figure it out, they won't use it. So it's important. I've used Google Docs before with other groups, similar to this one, and it didn't work out well for us, but maybe we weren't as smart as the people in this room. But We just need to be sure what we do is user-friendly.
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to keep it limited at the moment. We need a word processor, we probably need spreadsheets, and we need presentations. So I mean, Microsoft Office, to some people are used to using it, but once you get used to using Google, it's pretty much the same, if not simpler. And in some respects more powerful, in other respects less powerful, but it's free. We can't expect every mentor to suddenly go out and buy their own copy of Microsoft Office. Not everyone will have a laptop, and you can use this on your phone. So it's trying to get that as accessible as possible.
Is the repository available now?
Not now. So within Google Drive, there's a set of folders, and so you can have different structures within those folders. It's like File Explorer on a laptop or on a PC rather. So you can have different levels, and permissions can be set at different levels, so different people can access different folders, and even within those different folders, different files might not be accessible to someone who can see the folders. So that allows security in the roles and permissions, which is what we're moving on to here. So roles and permissions, we've identified different roles. So we've got the CIE administrators. So they'll be the people who set up and maintain everything. This kind of gives a little bit more balance and continuity if people leave or join. The CIE will provide that administration kind of service to make sure that the CIE always have access to their files and the mentor files. The mentor team leaders, again, might require different permissions to the rest of us. They might be creating documents. We might not want everybody just going in and creating new documents willy-nilly in the folder. The entrepreneur, this is all for them, so they're going to need access to it. They might want to start new documents, but mentor team members will have different rights. Guest contributors might just be able to view certain files, not everything, but we might not want them going in and amending it or commenting on it. And then the whole group as well. So within that, the files, as I mentioned, the files can be set to be view, comment, or edit. Or we can block access completely. So you can give a permission to someone just to be able to view a file, but not even comment on it. They can't change it, they can't share it, they can't do anything. We can give people the ability to comment on it, so they can make suggested edits, or they can add a little comment on the site, and then they get reviewed and approved. And then edit is full changes. You can do whatever you like to the document. So again, based on your role and your permission, you'll have different file. And then the folders, as we've come across before, once we get the folder structure in place, you'll be able to see certain folders and not others. You'll be able to access some folders but not files within them. And again, you've got different permissions on there. So once you've given some, so I might be giving Bill permission to see a folder, but he might not actually be able to access any of the files within it, apart from one of them which his role is needed for. So it allows us to keep that collaboration, but with the protecting the IP, protecting who can see it. We can control exactly who's shared with and at what level they get that sharing permission, and we can review changes, we can track who's changed what, we can see who's got permission to see that. So if someone leaves a group, we can drop them off permissions, and it's all very manageable and secure. So that was kind of a quick, very quick whistle stop tour, just conscious of time, but if you do have any questions, then we can pick those up at the end or afterwards. And if you have any concerns, again, come see us. This is work in progress, this is a starting point. We just need to get some structure in to make the most of that hour and a half session that we have. Okay?
All right, so we're gonna talk about 8 or as many as I can entrepreneurial concepts. Really just wanna make sure people are aware of these, that you're having these types of conversations with your entrepreneurs. These are key to new businesses and also very valuable to existing businesses as well. But really to get these companies off the ground, keep them focused. We talked a lot about our entrepreneurs having many, many ideas. They're very creative. So how can we keep them focused and get them on the right track? So the first one here is a lean startup. I'm not gonna go through the video today, but I really encourage, it's a 2-minute video. It's a really great high-level overview of the lean startup. Are all of you familiar with the Lean Startup? Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so very high level. It's transforming how new products are developed and launched. So it's really about build, measure, learn. So getting out of the office, getting out of your building, going and talking to potential customers, and doing validated learning. So not going out there, locking yourself in a room, being in an incubator and building this whole big product, praying that when you're ready to launch it, there's gonna be people there ready to buy it. It's really about small steps along the way. We're gonna talk about an MVP, but it's getting out there, talking to your customers, validating with them, building hypotheses and assumptions on what your value proposition is going to be. What are the features and benefits are gonna be of this product, how people are gonna buy it, where they're gonna buy it, how much they're gonna pay for it, and testing and validating that all along the way. We talked about prototypes before, building some of these very small, even if it's a sketch, and going and talking to potential customers about this. This allows you to be more innovative because you're gonna get new ideas and really learnings from the potential people that you're talking to help really refine this to be the most successful. It's gonna help you to stop wasting people's time. If you're out there trying to sell them on something that they don't like, you've wasted their time, and you've also wasted all of your time and investments of building something that at the end you learn that people really don't want or need. It's not gonna solve any problems for them. And ultimately, all of that makes you more successful. Here's just a nice visual around the build, measure, and learn. Again, this is all to be faster. The faster we are to market, the faster we can make money, and it's all about validated learning. It's a scientific approach, small pieces, and it's that circle. We talked about the 3 levels of our entrepreneurs. In that first stage, in that first concept, there's 3 stages. So that's really all about build, measure, and learn. The first thing they go out with might not be what they decide to do. They might have to pivot after the learnings from the potential customers we're talking to. Again, I had a really nice video here. I'm gonna skip this, but this is all about the business model canvas. So I know even when I started in the business world, we had 20-page documents about a business model. For someone to sit locked in a room, trying to build this whole plan, get out there and start talking to people about it, it's not very concise, it's not fast. You start to put a lot of detail in there that's not really necessary. So having a business model canvas really allows you to focus on quality versus quantity. It allows you to have common language, so it's a 1-pager, all focused around the value proposition. It allows you to look at all the different aspects of your business, from operational to financial, how you're going to take it to market. But again, it's this 1 page, it's common language that you can share internally and externally, and really use this as a working document. You can keep revising this, testing it, and validating it internally and externally. Again, it's all focused around your value proposition. You talk about your customer relations, your channels, your customer segments, revenue streams, cost structure, who your key partners will be, the key activities, and your key resources. So as we're starting to have these early conversations with our entrepreneurs, this is a great template to pull out and say, all right, let's walk through this together. Where do they think their business is? Who are their key partners going to be? What's their value proposition? So that way you all have a key focus that you can keep iterating on as you work through the different stages with your entrepreneur. So the benefits of this, as I said, it's focus. Not having a 20-page document, sitting in a room trying to build out this whole business plan. Let's focus. It allows us to move fast with speed and agility, and common language, and it's centered again all in that value proposition. All right, the next concept is customer discovery. Again, a very short video, it's about 2 to 3 minutes. I encourage you to watch this video, a really nice overview of what the customer discovery process is. Is anyone familiar with Steve Blank and the whole Lean Startup movement and phase? Okay, so he has many, many books out there. He has a website that is fantastic, a lot of blog posts, a lot of great ideas, a lot of templates and tools to really help businesses be lean. So anywhere from new businesses all the way up through existing businesses. How do we be lean? How do we get to market faster? And customer discovery is the first of his 4-step process. So it's all about customer discovery, getting out of the building. Again, trying to identify who your early customers, who your early adopters will be that can then be ambulaged for you to help get the word out about your product. So what you're doing with them is, again, taking those assumptions, going out and testing it, and validating what you're doing is the right thing, and if not, you're gonna come back and pivot. So this leads us to another key concept, MVP, minimal viable product. It's not the MVP of the football game, it's the minimal viable product. And I alluded to it earlier, but it's about building something fast that adds value, that you can actually charge for, that people would use. So there's the old waterfall approach, where again, you'd stay incubated, you'd stay in the office, go and build this thing, write this book, and then publish day, product launch day comes, and you're sitting there hoping that people are gonna buy it, and you've spent all this time, it has all these great features and functions and all these great things you've invested in, and then you get there on the end date and where are my customers? Oh, they don't like this? What the heck am I gonna do now? So with an MVP, you're putting something out there that's the minimal product that has the minimal features that someone can actually use and give you feedback on. It's a starting point that you then can build on and build on and build on. And if you need to pivot, if you need to do something, you're not starting from scratch again. It keeps you agile, you can move, and again, continue to build on based on the customer feedback, based on learnings. The next concept is a SWOT analysis. This has been around forever. It focuses on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the internal strengths and weaknesses are what venture can control themselves. And then the opportunities or threats are the external pieces of this. So what are your competitors doing? What's happening in the marketplace? What are the other prices in the market? How's the economy changing? So they're all things that can be threats and opportunities to your business, but you need to be aware of these. And again, putting these all on a piece of paper, really building out a SWOT analysis will help the entrepreneur and that startup stay focused on these and use these things to maximize their opportunity for success. So how do you do this? Again, you can do this one-on-one. You can have the entrepreneur do it. You can have some of the mentees or mentors do it. But put these things down. You might come up with a massive list of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But come together and brainstorm and pull these all together as a team. The more ideas that there are, it's actually better. But then what you want to do is prioritize those. What are the key strengths that are going to set our business apart? What are the key weaknesses that we really need to focus on and turn into strengths? And then what about the opportunities and threats? How can we overcome them? And there's many different strategies to use to take the SWOT analysis and put it into action for the business. Speaking with Bill earlier today, many people can do this at a company level. They can do it at an initiative level within a business. But then Bill also had a great idea of doing it at a tactical level. Once you have the tactics defined for your business, do a SWOT analysis on each of those tactical levels so that you can understand, again, what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on these tactics that we're going to implement to move this business forward. All right, the next one is an elevator pitch, and I feel like I'm kind of doing an elevator pitch right now. So a lot of people focus on a value proposition, which is the core of your business. What's the value that you're going to deliver that people want to pay you for? But then they confuse that with the elevator pitch. So your value proposition is very important as you're creating your business, understanding what people are going to pay value for, what problems you're going to solve for them, and the proof behind it. Whereas the elevator pitch is kind of a shortened, sales, punchy version of that. Something that's very short and succinct. It's not full of all kinds of buzzwords. It's something that's going to capture their attention, 1 to 2 minutes, and it can be memorized. It's something that you want everyone in your sphere to be able to repeat, be able to say. It keeps everyone focused. If you don't have this elevator pitch based on the value proposition, people are just going to make up their own ideas of what your product is, how it works, and so forth. So your elevator pitch is really, the goal of it is, by the end of this elevator ride, I want people to know about my business, know what it does, and be curious to learn more. How can we get that next conversation? Okay, the next concept is the investor presentation. So this is what all of our entrepreneurs are going to get. And many times that's their goal, to get to that next step, because they need the funding to then move this business forward, move this idea forward. So the investor presentation is extremely important. It's a presentation that tells the story of the company, and it's a very key component. This is kind of your make and break if you're looking for that funding or need that funding to move forward. So it's very crucial to nail this and spend a lot of time building this presentation deck. It's much like an executive summary. It needs to cover all of the key pieces of what the business is. The 7 key components of a strong and unforgettable pitch I've listed here. I got this from Forbes. They've done a review of, I think it was 35 of the most successful investment pitches in the last so many years. So really great information on this. When we share out the notes, the link here is in the notes of this. But it was really about having the person who's behind this to really share their passion. That personal touch is so key. Yes, the numbers and everything else make a difference, but who's the person behind this? Bring that passion forward. Make sure that you give the credentials of that person. Why are they great for this? Why do they have the knowledge about this idea or this venture? And another key piece of this is you spend all this time on this deck, getting to this point, understand who your audience is and where they are. A lot of times you might have investors who are going to be remote. Make sure your videos work. Make sure you have enough time. Make sure, the presentation works from a technical perspective. Have backups, because this is your one opportunity to make it. And the last concept I'm going to hit on is angel investing. So many of us here are venture capitalists because that's all what's in the news and the big businesses. That's what they're looking at, venture capitalists. But more of our entrepreneurs will be looking at angel investors. So they're also known as angel funders, private investors, business angels, and really they're focused on helping startups make those incremental steps to get to the next stage of their business. They're injecting money either in one chunk, or they could put injections all along the way, making benchmarks of, if we get here, then we'll inject some more. And a key difference of the angel investor versus the venture capitalist is that the angel investor is using their own private funds. So many times it might be just a single person's funds, it might be a group of friends or family funds, or they could do crowdsourcing. But it's much different than venture capitalists where they're using the funds of others. Another key difference is the speed and agility that an angel investor could provide to a business. There's not as many legal terms, commitments. Angel investors are really investing in an idea. They see there's potential for an idea, so they're investing in that idea. They may walk away with no money in the end, and many times they'll go in having exit strategies to safeguard themselves. But they're investing in an idea, they're investing in the entrepreneur, knowing that if they could walk away with this, losing all of that money. The other thing interesting about angel investors is that there is an accrediting board, but they do not have to be accredited to be an angel investor. So their Securities Exchange Commission does have some requirements to be an accredited member, but again, you do not need to be to invest in some of these ideas. They're usually high wealth individuals. As I said, they are investing private funds and they look for opportunities for a defined exit strategy. So angels versus venture capitals, we'll go over some of this. They invest their own money in assets. They also invest much lower amounts than a venture capitalist. A venture capitalist is looking for businesses that have posted success. They want to get into a business that's already proven to be successful. They're posting great numbers, whereas an angel is looking, again, at the early stages of companies, ingesting money to help them move on to succeed. And the last interesting fact I'll leave you with is that angel funds approximately 6 times as many companies than venture capitalists. Obviously in much smaller amounts of money, but angel funders are doing many more things than VCs are today.
Are we going to be able to get copies of this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that. Thank you, Michelle. So fast. And really, we wanted to cover the material that Michelle was talking about, because for some of you that have come from larger corporate environments, some of these terms and some of these concepts and even the forms like the business model canvas might be things that you're not familiar with, and yet we really need to get all of you familiar with these, because these are the terms that our entrepreneurs are going to be hearing out in the world. Investors are going to say, what's your value proposition, or where are you